IMAX is trying to maximize its presence in China. The Canadian company opened its first big screen movie theater in Shanghai in 2001 and is now planning to open 450 theaters across the country over the next 5 years. I spoke with CEO Richard Gelfond and asked him about IMAX's push into China.
The size of our business in China is now about 100 screens versus about 400 in North America. In the next 5 years, the size of Chinese market should be about equivalent to the U.S. market. And right now in China, for a film we're involved in, we're doing roughly 10 to 20% of the box office.
You've recently signed a deal with Wanda, which is Asia's largest theater operator and the owner of AMC. What is the nature and the details of that deal?
So Wanda is our largest partner in China and in fact, in the world right now. And this deal provides for another up to 120 theaters that will be rolling out with Wanda over the next 5 years. Wanda is the largest real estate developer in China, and they created this large entertainment shopping concept. And IMAX theaters will be in most of these Wanda malls going forward.
How much of your revenue is coming from China at the moment?
At the moment, it's not that large. But if you look at the build out over time, when these approximately 350 to 400 theaters are open, it'll probably be about 30%.
Are you concerned about the slowdown in the growth rate in China? Is that an issue for IMAX, or is the fact that it's shifting towards a consumer-driven economy more of a boon to your business?
We're doing very well in China, and I think it's largely because of what you mentioned, the focus of the government and the focus of business on a consumer-driven economy. And as the demographic increases, as the standard of living increases, and as China turns more inward rather than an export-driven economy, we seem to be doing very well. And given the rate of our expansion, I'm not really concerned about it. I think we're in a good space.
Now, you've mentioned to me that the IMAX brand is actually stronger in China than in most other places. What do you attribute that to?
I attribute it to the fact that in other places, like using the United States for an example, there was an established infrastructure in cinema, and we had to convince people to change their regular habits and go to an IMAX theater. In China, we grew up with cinema. So when we started, there were only 2,000 screens in China, and now there's roughly 16,000 screens in China. So I think the consumers sort of said, do I see it in a regular theater, or do I go see it in IMAX? And that's deeply planted in their minds. And also, as you know, consumer brands are very important in China. And I think there's a certain amount of prestige and getting a superior experience, and the Chinese like being associated with the IMAX brand.
Well, what is the difference between an IMAX ticket and a regular ticket?
It depends on the market, but typically it's about 30% more for an IMAX theater ticket in any given market. So if let's say in one market it's $8, for a regular cinema ticket, it would be the equivalent in RMB to $11.
You've recently built theaters with nearly all of China's top cinema operators, but now you're shifting your revenue model from charging upfront fees for opening these theaters to getting a percentage cut of the box office. Why this shift?
Well, typically when we go into a new country, we really need to know it before we're comfortable risking our capital. And when we first got into China, we didn't know if the box office would be transparent. We didn't know, the extent of the partners and how good they were. But as we've gotten more and more comfortable doing business in China, we become more comfortable with taking risk. So we put our own capital in, and we share the upside. If it's really good, that's great for us and our partner. And if it doesn't work out as well, we're both in the same position.
Now, you say that you've gotten comfortable with the Chinese market, and in fact, IMAX has had a really strong relationship with the Chinese movie industry, whereas the same can't really be said for other Hollywood studios that have had more contentious relations, more of a strained situation. What do you attribute that to?
I think part of it is history. We started going to China about 15 years ago, before it was as obvious what the market was going to evolve. So we built relationships and friendships over a long period of time. I think the second thing is also philosophy. We have over 65 employees in China, and we see ourselves as part of the fabric of China, and that's very much our philosophy that's evolved. And I think the Hollywood studios are starting to build that infrastructure, but I think they've, until recently, seen it as an export market, like they see many other markets in the world. But given the size of the Chinese market and how important it's going to be. I think it'll pass the U.S. in box office by 2018. I think Hollywood will evolve to that model, but we just got there sooner.
And IMAX's CEO Rich Gelfond is in fact being honored tonight for his company's long-term investments and commitment to constructive relationships in China at the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations annual gala taking place here in New York.